I've decided, I'm buying the luxury car from you, Tiffany. Most people don't need a high-end car, but this isn't about necessity. My parents have been considering a new vehicle, and ever since I married Peter, I've noticed a shift in him. He's become more self-centered, eyeing the luxury car my parents gifted me with barely concealed envy. Frankly, I'm tired of it. My name is Tiffany, I'm 28 years old, and I met Peter in college. We've been married for 3 years now. Peter is sociable, charismatic, and well-liked, everything I am not. I'm introverted, with few friends, preferring quiet spaces over social gatherings. Our connection began over shared classes, evolving into study sessions. When he asked me out, I was caught off guard but overjoyed. I said yes without hesitation, and just like that, our relationship began. I admired Peter's charm and dedication to his studies, but I often wondered what drew him to me. He had plenty of stylish, attractive friends. Finding a girlfriend wouldn't have been difficult for him. Once, I mustered the courage to ask if he truly believed I was the right one for him. He looked surprised, then confused. Why would you even ask that? I hesitated before admitting my insecurity. I want to understand why you chose me. There was a pause before he finally answered. Because I feel comfortable with you. His response left me unsatisfied, but before I could press further, he grew irritated and turned his attention to his phone. Not wanting to start an argument, I let it go, forcing a smile and apologizing for bringing it up, but the doubt lingered. Despite my unease, life moved forward. We finished college, got married, and settled into a condo. I secured a stable job, while Peter pursued graduate studies and research. My mother was thrilled when I told her about our engagement, though she admitted she had started to worry that I'd never introduce a boyfriend. I felt guilty for keeping Peter a secret for so long, but she understood. It was just my nature. Knowing I had found someone to be by my side reassured her. My parents have always been my role models. They met in college and built a life of mutual respect and unwavering support. My father worked his way up in a major company, while my mother pursued her culinary passion, eventually teaching cooking classes. Their marriage was a partnership, where boundaries were honored, and ambitions encouraged. Growing up in such an environment, I valued independence and self-sufficiency. Although I excelled academically, I chose not to pursue graduate school, eager to start a life of my own. Despite my privileged upbringing, I never wanted to rely on my parents indefinitely. I dreamed of building a marriage like theirs, one of balance and respect. But after Peter and I moved in together, things changed. He was a graduate student working part-time, yet he barely contributed financially. When I gently suggested he could put more of his earnings toward our shared expenses, he brushed me off. I do contribute, he said, his tone indifferent. Didn't you say you'd handle the living expenses when we moved in together, Tiffany? His words unsettled me. It was true, I had reassured him that I could manage, given my stable job, but the way he dismissed my concerns left me speechless. Peter sighed heavily. You wouldn't understand. Being a grad student is expensive. I hesitated before asking, but what about the money you spend on going out? He ignored my question. Instead, he casually added, oh, by the way, I need $1,000 for a research trip. Can you cover it? I'll pay you back later. Requests like these became frequent. Our problems deepened. He started staying out late, leaving me alone with untouched meals and unanswered calls. When he did come home, he was in a good mood, as if nothing was wrong. Sometimes, seemingly out of nowhere, he'd suggest, hey, Tiffany, didn't you want to go somewhere? I have tomorrow off, let's go. He'd also compliment my cooking, making me feel momentarily valued. In those fleeting moments, I clung to the hope that our marriage was what I had envisioned. But deep down, I knew better. I felt increasingly alone, trapped in a cycle of brief happiness and prolonged neglect. I told no one about my struggles. I didn't want to burden my parents, who were so happy about my marriage, but I suspected they knew something was wrong. It had been too long since I visited, and when I finally did, my father gently suggested I stay for dinner. My mother, eager to welcome me back, prepared a lavish meal. During dinner, my father mentioned that Aunt Lori had visited recently and wanted to see me. He described her as spontaneous, a woman of ambition and independence. I'll reach out to her soon. Thanks, Dad, I said, recognizing the subtle way he was trying to reconnect me with support. A few days later, I met Lori at a cafe. As always, she was effortlessly stylish, She took one look at my outfit and smiled knowingly. Tiffany, marriage is just the beginning of a lifelong journey. You should always feel confident and attractive, no matter what. The way you present yourself matters, so don't forget to take care of yourself, she advised, sipping her tea with poise. I realized then how much I had neglected my own needs. I apologized for losing touch, but Lori only chuckled. That's typical of you, Tiffany. You're honest and serious, but being too timid often comes from a lack of experience. When I heard you got married, I thought, finally, Tiffany is stepping forward. It had been ages since I spent a day off with someone, and the weather was beautiful, perfect for an afternoon out. Sitting on the terrace, bathed in warm sunlight, I felt a rare sense of ease. For the first time, I found myself confiding in Lori. She listened patiently, nodding without interrupting. When I finished, she asked gently, "You haven't told your parents, have you?" I shook my head. "No, I even hesitated to tell you today. I didn't want to admit my struggles. I thought I should be able to handle this on my own, to be independent. If Mom and Dad knew, they'd probably ask me to move back home immediately. I want to figure things out myself first." Lori didn't push me. Instead, she placed a reassuring hand over mine. "I understand, but Tiffany, if you ever need help, call me first. No matter where I am, I'll be there for you." Her words lingered in my mind long after we parted ways. I sat in the driver's seat, trying to steady my breath. After a moment of hesitation, I called my Aunt Lori for advice. A few days later, after much contemplation, I agreed to the divorce and moved back in with my parents. They welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace, but that peace was short-lived. One afternoon, Peter arrived at my parents' house with his parents in tow. They all settled into the living room, and Peter's father broke the silence with a stern voice. "We're here to discuss our son's divorce." As the conversation unfolded, I remained firm. "If you refuse to cooperate, I'll use my parents' connections at the university to make things difficult for you." "Peter," I warned, "it wouldn't take much for a complaint from their daughter to damage a junior registrar's career." Peter, who still harbored feelings for me, recoiled at my approach. He saw it as intimidation. His father, however, took offense on his behalf. "We could easily contest this divorce," he argued. "She's manipulative and greedy beneath that simple facade." Poor Peter, she even bribed him to stay away. Who knows what else she's hiding? Perhaps she entertained other men. We should take this to family court and claim coercion. Unless, of course, there's a genuine apology. For instance, if she surrenders the car she's been driving, we might reconsider. Peter and his parents sat in tense silence, absorbing the weight of his father's words. Just then, the doorbell rang. My mother answered it, revealing Aunt Lori standing behind her. She stepped into the living room, her presence shifting the energy in the room. "Sorry I'm late. How's the discussion going?" Peter's parents had only met Lori once at my wedding, and his mother wasted no time showing her disapproval. "What are you doing here? It's rude to barge in. We're in the middle of something private. Outsiders should leave." Lori, unfazed, smiled. "Outsider? That's a strong word, but yes, I've heard all about Peter's divorce." Peter's mother narrowed her eyes. "And how would you know that?" "My brother told me. I couldn't miss such an important moment for my dear niece." Someone scoffed. "You're probably here to meddle or ask for money." Lori raised an eyebrow and reached into her bag. "Can you still say that after seeing this?" She pulled out a stack of documents and laid them on the table. "I hired a detective to look into Peter's activities. Turns out he's been unfaithful, multiple times. Despite being married, he rarely came home, always too busy with someone else. He took advantage of Tiffany's generosity and even borrowed money from her." A heavy silence filled the room. Peter's parents shifted uncomfortably, their earlier confidence fading. Peter looked at me, desperate. "Tiffany, you know I was always focused on my university research. Whenever I did come home, we spent time together. We were just like any other married couple, weren't we?" Before I could respond, his father interjected. "Peter, don't say another word. We'll handle this. None of this is your fault." His mother clutched the documents in disbelief. "These must be fabricated. Our Peter would never." Aunt Lori cut in, her voice sharp. "Kind to you, maybe, but what about his wife?" She pulled out a photograph from the stack and held it up. "By the way, I also had the detective investigate someone else, William." Peter's mother paled. "What do you mean?" I was at a hotel for a business meeting recently and saw him there. He wasn't alone. I had the detective dig deeper. And what do you know? William's been unfaithful too. Peter's mother snatched the papers, scanning them frantically. William, what is this? How long has this been going on? Her voice wavered as the truth sank in. William, looking stricken, reached for the documents. Kayla, stop looking at that, give them to me. But it was too late. Kayla shot up from her seat, trembling with rage. You've been cheating on me. The car you insisted on keeping, it was for her, wasn't it? Despite William's attempts to pacify her, Kayla stormed out of the house, tears streaking her face. William hurried after her, but she refused to listen. Peter, still reeling from the confrontation, scrambled after them. Hey, wait, what about me? The rest of us sat in stunned silence. Aunt Laurie, however, looked completely satisfied, throwing me a knowing wink. She had anticipated this unraveling all along. In the aftermath, Laurie revealed that Peter's parents eventually divorced. You won't make the same mistake twice, she told me. Now, let's work on making you even more beautiful. You deserve it. True to her word, she took me under her wing. She visited often, taking me shopping, teaching me about self-care, and encouraging me to embrace my confidence. A year later, I made a pivotal decision. I enrolled in graduate school. I poured myself into my studies and personal growth, transforming into someone I had never imagined I could be. Time passed quickly. One day, while waiting at a crosswalk, I heard someone call my name. I turned and saw Peter. It's been a while. You've changed a lot, he said, his voice tinged with surprise. At first, I hardly recognized him. The man who had once been so proud and carefree now looked lost. After his parents' scandalous divorce, he had dropped out of graduate school, cut off financially. He struggled to maintain the life he once knew. The women who had once surrounded him were long gone, and his former prestige had vanished overnight. Before he could say more, a voice interrupted. Sorry for the wait. Are you a friend of Tiffany's? It was Kevin, the man I had recently started seeing. He stood tall, exuding quiet confidence. Nearby, a group of women whispered, admiring him. Wow, he's handsome. Could he be a model? Kevin noticed my brief exchange with Peter and offered him a polite nod. Then, turning to me, he asked, shall we go? I smiled. Yes, we're done here. As Kevin took my hand, Peter remained frozen in place, his mouth slightly open as if searching for words, but I had none left to give him. Without looking back, I walked forward, leaving Peter behind, exactly where he belonged, in my past.